What is happening? Mr. Hilsman, great seeing you, brother.
Excited to be here.
Oh, man. We had a whole podcast before we actually recorded the podcast.
Show before the show, man. That's awesome.
I hadn't seen you, so I felt like I wanted to vomit all over you as trying to play catch up here. So it's good stuff, man. It's always a treat to have you in, and just being able to see it's really cool that I've been able to have the relationship with you, really early on in this adventure.
Day one.
Man, we're almost 8 years in.
Yeah.
And really remarkable to where you were to where you're at. And I know kind of jumping into the topic of things, right? Success follows clarity. And I think really being able to jump in, and a couple of the things that we were talking about prior to just getting, more and more clear, just because of, whatever your story was before, moving into another opportunity doesn't mean that's the story's already written, as you get to continue to kind of rewrite it. So I'm really excited for you to jump in, but I'll let you kind of, lead us into the jumping off point of where we want to really start unpacking.
You keep me out of the too many rabbit holes, and we'll have a good time and see if we can help some people today.
I love it.
So
always.
I guess I'm kind of excited to tell the rest of the story. A lot of people, if you don't know, 21 units prior to EXP, solo agent, been a solo broker years ago, had the bright idea to open my own brokerage and keep all the money. So notice I said solo, never made it past that stage. Yeah. Then I'm broker in charge, 9 agents. Friend talked me into being a broker in charge with him and his wife's company. 9 agents when I got there, 9 when they got divorced and closed it. Then I tried to have a small team, and that just really wasn't anything. I couldn't figure out how to have the bandwidth or the put all the pieces together. I could sell some houses, but then I thought I'll just get rid of these few agents and just sell houses and be left alone. So 21 deals the year before EXP, solo, no admin, no CTC, no VA, just me, creating the lead, calling the leads, doing the whole thing.
Yeah.
So how I got here, and then we'll get on to the rest of the story, was, one day I had a call from my broker saying, hey, it was actually the brokers, and this prior to EXP, the broker's new coach called me up and said, hey, I'm the new coach. I'm a Craig Proctor coach. I was like, you're not a Craig Proctor coach. You just got here, man. You can't be a Craig Proctor. Somebody deputized you to be a Craig Proctor coach. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't, but I had no knowledge of him going through any of the Proctor stuff. Good guy. But he said, so we're going to take you to 21 to 42 units. And I'm like, yeah, no, we're not. And then he proceeded to tell me how we were going to go to 42 units. Now, stick with me on the story, because this is how I've learned how to recruit agents, right? And knowing the fundamentals of, after a few minutes, I said, look, I'm not doing 42 units. And he was kind of in shock. And in my head, I'm like, not coaching my kids baseball anymore, or at least being at the games. I'm not going to my daughter's cheerleading. I'm missing family dinners. Heck, I might not even be happy doing 42, right? So I told him, I'm not doing that. Because I also thought I don't want to have twice as many as amendments to address concerns. Didn't have that in me either. Now, what I learned at EXP, and from John, Jay, Michael mostly, was if he'd have said, hey, I'm the new coach, and I'm going to take you from 21 units to 42 units, and you're going to work the same amount of time, and you're going to make 50% more money, and we're going to take that other 50% of money and get you some help, a CT and admin or systems. So we're going to invest some of the money, work the same amount of times, double your units sold. You're going to profit 50% more money. I said, dude, sign me up. Where have you been? Right. So, but he didn't call with asking what I wanted. What I didn't want was to do 42 units, to work twice as hard, to have no help, to make the broker twice as much money off me. I had no interest in that. Right. Mm-hmm. So I use that today when I'm talking to agents to go, when I can, because I still screw it up 8 years later, but try to remember who they are and ask about them and what they're trying to do. Because I wasn't trying to do 42 units. Now, with that said, I probably could have done 100 units or 200 if I would have had someone help me with that structure. So maybe that's what I had in me to go from 0 agents DXP to 1,240 something today. And I came all by myself. EXP didn't find me. I found EXP. Jay Kinder didn't find me. I found Jay Kinder. And, blessed to have Michael Reese and John Kitchens. And, John, before I forget, one of the things I tell people a lot of times is why it didn't work before was something you told me that was super simple, but I had missed for a decade. And the other guy was plenty smart enough to tell me this. He just didn't tell me this for whatever reason. But what I was doing was I was trying to manage my expectations and not our agreement, right? So all the trouble I had with the small team I was trying to build for blowing tons of money on leads that, never got converted was, and even at EXP in the beginning, bringing an agent over thinking X, that's my expectation, but not managing our agreement. You can move the needle super quick in your business once you start managing agreements. But that's kind of the rest of the story on how a regular guy doing 21 units probably had more in him than that. I didn't do hundreds of units, probably maybe could have with the right person, but I came over here, got with the right group, copy and pasted, and then kind of back to the title, Success Follows Clarity. I got super clear. I was super committed. I recommit sometimes daily, sometimes hourly. It takes what it takes on the commitment side. But see, I wanted to have a large group with monthly passive income. I did not want to have hundreds of units sold in a team without leverage or systems in the other model or in the other opportunity. So you too can probably have what you want in business and life if you figure out what that is, commit to it, find someone to help you. And then what I told Jay too is, hey man, I'm just going to copy and paste. And if I screw this up, we can figure out why it's not working for me a lot quicker than if I tweak it. So hopefully somebody gets some good value out of that. But that's a little bit of the rest of the story.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And the clarity is everything, right? And it's essentially, the guy came in and gave you a prescription without giving finding out the diagnosis, finding out what's going on. What are you trying to do? Why are you feeling this way? Like, do you want to do more than 21 units? I mean, what do you want to do? What's the goal? What is the real goal? Is that really the goal? And I think it's just, somebody comes in and pushes their agenda on you instead of finding out what you're trying to do and how can I help you get to where you want to go. And it was a couple of the things that we were talking about, prior to out of the the conversation that I was sharing from yesterday. And, if he could understand your goals and your vision, then he could have gone into, my objective is to help you achieve your vision, instead of he was trying to get you to join the vision that the team lead, the broker, had. And his job, he thought as a coach, is I just need you to get to more deals so I can, help this guy achieve his vision, instead of saying, Dan, what's your vision? What are you trying to do? What are your goals? And he just missed a very important question.
Little tiny piece of, and I don't fault him, but his job, and he had a salary, was to double my units, so the owner doubled his income. I don't have a problem with that at all. It just didn't really work out too well for either one of us at that place.
Yeah, for sure.
And thank goodness that happened, right? Because if that doesn't happen, I'm not sitting here today. So if he would have done what I learned now, and that next year we went from 21 to 42 in the same amount of hours, because that was super important. Family and quality time was super important. And then I probably would have signed up to go from 42 to 80 and 80 to 160 if we could have kept knocking that out without increasing the hours and keeping me at my kids' baseball, daughters' cheerleading, family dinners. I'd have pretty much signed up for whatever he wanted me to.
Sure. It's the whole just asking you the question, what does it have to look like for you to stay committed to this, right, through this growth, and for us to be able to achieve that? Because he didn't ask you your non-negotiables. He didn't ask you why, you're only doing 21 deals, because you could have done more. You just had a certain block of time, and you're like, listen, I'm going to get out what I put in this time, and that's it, right? I'm not willing to sacrifice, like you said, ball games, cheer events, family events, church obligations, things like that, like establishing the non-negotiables. But I think that's where great leaders come in, and great, trying to help, build this out, is like, dude, what do you want to accomplish, and how much time are you willing to commit to it? That's kind of the secret sauce. And then you can like, okay, well, that's where you want to go. Let's reverse engineer. You only have this much time. Okay, cool. then we'll build it from there. But yeah, it's I'm glad he didn't have the arsenal of questions to really to get you on board.
Yeah, thank goodness. Well, that was a God thing, man. I've been praying and praying and praying for years and years, so I'm here. It's a God thing. 100% believe that. And then one thing I told Jay at the very end, I said, look, I'll do this if you're going to commit to helping me. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to help you. And I'm like, yeah, we'll see. And then, but I said, I got to commit to helping me help other people once you help me. And he said, yeah, because that was super important to me because, I'd been at it a while and hadn't quite figured it out and figured somebody would help me figure it out. I really thought it was the last guy. And in fairness to him, he probably was the guy. He just wasn't the guy for me or just didn't work at that time for whatever reason. But, it's a blessing. Super happy here, not going anywhere, super grateful. And, learned so much and got a good family of people. So kind of leads me a little bit of my next thought, which was after taking that, something I've done recently is write out 100 things that I want. And that was pretty painful because when I started, I thought there was an exercise I was asked to do and there was not 100 things I wanted, but I finally was able to write it out. But it was also helpful. Then he said, all right, so also write 100 experiences. And then writing the experiences helped me to complete the things I wanted list. And then more importantly, that exercise had to do with writing down some things that I had to do I had to be someone that I wasn't in order to accomplish some of those things. So without going super deep into it, I'll just give you a quick example, like oceanfront house. I have an oceanfront condo, but maybe an oceanfront house someday. The reason I say maybe is I still don't know if I want to put time, effort, and energy to have that in the maintenance. But let's just say that I decide to do that. I'm aware that in the future, if I went and knocked on that door today and I was there, or whoever's in that house, it could be me in 5 years and it could be somebody else. But whoever's in that house, if the owner opened the door, he or she would have some things today that I don't have. Mm-hmm. So then I had to write out the qualities that person would have or that I would need to have that. Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting exercise that helped me get through the 100 things that I wanted, the 100 experiences I wanted. And then just as important, who I needed to be to have some of the things that I wanted, because I don't believe I can have those things and keep them if you're not that person. So, it's probably not a mystery to anyone that if someone did open a $15 million oceanfront house in Sea Pine, South Carolina, that person that's the owner, unless they inherited it, but, then it may come to losing it, they probably still have to be a certain type or level or have certain qualities to have that. And then to keep it. So I found that kind of fascinating. And that's a little bit of the path I've gone down lately is I try to do things to become who I need to be more so than just to do it as a checklist item.
No, that's fantastic. How long ago did you do this exercise?
I did it probably 8 months ago and then maybe 2 months ago. And then I just started tweaking it. And it's pretty exciting to go back and look and just see. Some of the things were as simple as take my dad to Doug's restaurant, right? Kind of this place in town. It's like the second one. We both thought it'd be nice. He likes the breakfast at the first one. And so, not a real hard checklist item, right? Compared to a $15 million oceanfront house. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm on my second 2.5 revisions of it. And when I first started though, they said, you're going to stop at 17 or 23, but you got to keep going. So it's a really good exercise and it's pretty easy to do once you commit to doing it. Kind of the theme today, right? Made a decision, I committed, I recommitted, I completed it, and then the experiences was something new. Because I thought I'm not really a super materialistic kind of guy, and I really pretty much an introvert and don't have, I don't really want 3 supercars and I don't want a lot of stuff because I kind of like the quality of life and low maintenance type of life. But the experiences got me kind of excited. Yeah. I thought, well, there's things that I would rather experience maybe more so than things I'd like to have. So I found that interesting.
What led to even doing the exercise? Like what were you in search of? What were you missing?
Really growth within my business, because I'm also aware that like the rock in my shoe has always been FLQA. I've had as many as 26. At one point I was at 21. I dropped all the way to 6. Learned so much in that free fall. Some of it was weird, like had a guy die, so, bigger problems than I did, right? Had a lady get cancer, had 2 ladies' mom get cancer. One lady went to prison. EXP actually called me and said, "Hey, seen so-and-so lately?" I'm like, "Nah." They said, "Call me back," I don't know, a couple of days, a couple of weeks later, and said, "Hey, just to let you know, she's in prison, and we're taking her list and moving it to somebody else. You're not in the area." I was like, "Wow, she's not going to be FLQA either, huh?" So it was probably being fascinated and okay with and aware that in order to have, you need 30 FLQA currently. So it's more like 40 to be there comfortably. And I thought, wow. I looked the other day, I think there was 47, did a quick number check. I think there's 47 people at the company with over 30. So kind of a rare area to be in. And then I became aware that probably don't have that because I'm not the person I need to be to have that yet. And then kind of went down the path of there's other things in life and experiences that I'd like to have. And I probably won't get those either if I don't become, who I need to be. So actually in learning and being aware of that helped me to go through. And sometimes I show up because I need to show up to become, not to do. So recently I went to Dallas, Texas to a leadership event. Kind of wanted to go to that one, but I've gone to a few others that I thought, well, if you're going to be the leader and you're going to have relationships and you're going to have communicate with others and you're going to collaborate, you probably need to you probably need to become that person, and you can't become that person without going to do the things you need to do to become that person. So it's more of a mindset of doing to be, not doing as a checklist item, just to do something.
Yeah. It really is so good. I was actually listening to I don't know. Have you ever met Nick Nanton? Did you ever meet Nick? Do you know who Nick is? So Nick goes way back with us, back into the early EGS days, and he was actually one of the guys that we got connected and hooked up with. And Nick, he recently retired, shut that business down, full force into what he's doing. He's more on the storytelling, songwriting, documentary side of things. Nick's fascinating. I always joke he's the most connected person that I know, right? Like you play the game, right? You got one phone call. Who you calling? I'm calling Nick because Nick, I can tell him the situation and he knows enough people that he can coordinate everything else just from his phone. But I'm in a text accountability group with Nick, and we did a lot of the best-selling author books, to where, you do a collaboration in the books and being able to promote those, just doing types of Times Square events and just all kinds of things that we've done with Nick. And he gave a recommendation in the accountability group. Somebody had a long training day and they were just asking recommendations for books and podcasts and things like that. And he's like, if you guys haven't listened to the Robert Rodriguez podcast when he was on Joe Rogan last year, go listen to it. It's worth finding. It's worth listening to. And came out in April of 25. And I'm like, how did I miss this? Robert Rodriguez, changed movies, love his movies. I never really have listened to him. That's probably why I skated over it and why I never listened to him, but I went back and listened to it. My goodness, how amazing of a conversation. But one of the things that he talked about in there, and will kind of get us into our, clarity side of things. But he touched on, and he said, and this was so relieving. He was like, listen, don't focus on trying to make hits, focus on the entire body of work. So he was talking about movies, right? Like, don't try to go out and make, blockbuster hits every time, because it's not going to happen. Focus on your entire body of work, right? Don't be sucked into. And so, like, even almost 800 podcast episodes, there's some really good ones, and there's some ones that, like, I wish we would just delete. They're so bad. But it's the whole body of work. And I'm like, gosh, man, that is so good. Instead of, trying to make that. And I don't know have you ever heard that study? I might've shared it at one of the KTs, but it was, and who knows if it's true, it could have been made up, but it's a great story. was this college professor had his class, and it was an arts class, and he broke the class into two groups. You had the group over here, they were going to be judged on creating the perfect piece of pottery, right? Their whole grade was, the entire group was going to be graded on one perfect piece of pottery. Right. And the other group was going to be graded on building 50 pounds of pottery. And so as long as they built 50 pounds, created 50 pounds of pottery, they would have got an A. And at the end of kind of this assignment, the group that had to make one perfect piece of pottery, they couldn't do it. They could not make the perfect piece of pottery. But the group over here that was just trying to put out 50 pounds of pottery, they did create the perfect piece of pottery. And kind of the lesson is that when you're focused on making something perfect, it'll never happen. But when you're focused on just creating, that perfect piece will come from it. So it was just like listening to that story, and then knowing of the school story of the pottery. I was like, oh my gosh, that's the same thing, right? They're saying the same thing. And what he said, and it's everything that you said since we started this, you get to decide who you want to, or who you have to, or who you must become in order for these experiences and these wants to be true. And this was what Robert followed up. This is what he told Joe. He said, give yourself the label you want to be.
That's powerful.
That is just like so powerful, right? So like, and he said, you can put them into affirmations. It doesn't matter. He said, but that's the label of how you choose to view who you are, right? Like he had to do everything creating the movie because he didn't have the budget to go hire people to do things. So he learned how to do it all. He wrote it, he directed it, he ran the camera, he did the editing, everything, did the sound, did everything. And so he's like, do you think I'm going to tell myself that I'm not a great writer? Do you think I'm going to tell myself I'm not a great, behind the camera? Do you think I'm going to tell myself I'm a horrible director? Heck no. I choose to give myself the label of what it is that I want to be and who I want to become, because I know the power of giving myself that label and saying it, and I hear it, and that's where my belief system starts. And I was like, my goodness, so powerful. So, I mean, the whole conversation was great, but those were the two big things that I wrote down from there is like, listen, don't worry about that hit. Don't worry about that stinker that you just laid. Focus on the entire body of work. And then just remember that you get to choose who you want to be, who you must become to have the things that you want in your life. And it's everything that you were just saying and how powerful it is to create, those labels that we give ourselves, and they can be disempowering or they can be empowering. And, how empowering, your example of who you've become to achieve, the things in 8 short years, right? It doesn't feel like 8 short years. It feels like forever, but think about it in the whole context of things, of look at kind of where you were 8 years ago to where, you've come to this point. It's pretty awesome.
I like the body of work comment because it is like, the growth came in my struggles, not in my having the wins. Like when I hit the triple, I don't really get a lot of growth, but it was, getting the double play against me was, stuff like that. It was baseball analogy was where a lot of the growth came in. And then, you get to see what you're made of and who you are when you have a pretty good free fall in business. And, a lot of the pieces still were there, but some of the FLQA component was, luckily the rest of it was pretty much intact. But yeah, and then, a little bit of life lesson and weird stuff. Like I didn't factor in life to others in counting FLQA. So it's been a lot, but it's been a growth experience, and all the growth though came in the have my ass handed to me, not in the wins.
Isn't that crazy? And how important your faith and how to reframe things in those free falls. How important is it to have that type of support and that type of mindset to be able to navigate, the struggles?
Yeah, it was, faith was, a big piece of that. And then, I at the time I had a coach, and I would tell him, "Hey man, it's going to make I'm at like 12." And he's like, I'll say, "Hey, it's going to make a great comeback story." And then like, I thought 12 was the bottom, and then I was at 9, and that meant I lost another level. And then he's like, I'm like, "Man, it's going to be a great comeback story." And then I was at 6 and told him the same thing. It's a really good comeback story. And he's like, "Hey, you got to quit saying that, because, we got to like turn the ship around." But that's all I had was, hey, this is, I had basically 2 choices: to be in the mindset of this can be fine. I'll get it turned around. It's going to be a great comeback story. It's going to be helpful to me. It's going to be helpful to others. Or, and I only mean this partially kidding, I was going to go home and lay it down in fetal state beside my bed and start crying. And the wife comes home and goes, "What in the heck's," I mean, it was almost to that point. Right. But, I'm grateful for it. Like, I'm grateful for the stuff that happened prior to EXP to get me here. And then it's the journey. You've heard that before. It's not the destination, it's the journey, and get there and try to enjoy it along the way, and have a little humility and a little humor with it. But I was at 14 FLQAs, 7 different times, and that's a big number. And I mean like 15, 16, 14, 14, 17, 14. And so God's got a little humor there. So I'm like, but on a serious note with that, I was like, okay, I am painfully aware that there's something that I need to learn or have or become to stop being at 14. So that too was a decision to commit to something, to figuring that out, and then doing the work to get there. So I don't know. It's been a joy. It's a blessing. I tell others that. I feel it's a little bit of an obligation, to take a blessing and then turn around and try to help others with that blessing. But yeah, I'll tell you something pretty cool about writing the exercise down. The guy that I visited that would be me in the future at that house, because actually mentally, it's not really remote viewing, but it kind of touches on that if you know a little bit about that. It's not remote viewing, but it's the same concept. Was I went into the future and knocked on the door, and the guy that came to the door was in really good shape, and he had a slim stomach, and he was a little bit tanned, but he was in really good shape, right? So in that, I found myself watching YouTube videos on how to reduce visceral fat. And we were getting down the rabbit hole I talked about, but maybe there's some value here too, right? So, I wouldn't like go pay, and I'm not a very heavy guy around the stomach, but, I didn't want to be that guy, that looked pretty good, but had a bit of a pot belly. But so then I thought, the way for me to fix that wasn't through dieting. It became watching those YouTube videos. And then it was really a matter of learning that you can take your body into autophagy, and autophagy comes after a certain amount of time of not eating. It's usually around 12 hours, maybe 16. So then it was an exercise of shortening my eating windows for lack of putting it in a more colorful way. Basically, you're having your body reduce some of your fat around your midsection by not eating, and then your body takes care of that, as opposed to getting lipo, which I wasn't going to do or anything like that. So I did find it interesting that I wasn't aware. I mean, I was aware of what I was doing, but then when I was going back through the exercise, and I realized that guy in that house that opens the door is slim and in good shape. And so then I became real aware of what we're really doing. And in this conversation, or any conversation you have, a lot of the work we get done is because of our subconscious mind directing us to do that. We get very little done in the conscience. So it's the subconscious. And so it's an exercise of writing that down, that I want to become a guy that, is that guy, the way that guy looked at that house in the future that opened the door to the owner. If I'm going to have what he has, then I need to be that. But then I found it really fascinating that then my subconscious mind, without me being aware, I was like on YouTube looking for videos to how to reduce visceral fat. And then, to rewrite the exercise going, wow, I'm becoming physically that guy anyway. Right. Yeah. So that wouldn't have happened if I didn't write the exercise. I wouldn't have been on YouTube if my subconscious, because I didn't think, hey, you know what I'll do today is I'm going to sit down and go to YouTube and start looking at ways to reduce visceral fat through managing a fasting window period. Right. But that all happened mentally because of the exercise of writing down what I wanted and knowing who I thought I needed to become and what that guy had. So I don't know. I found that whole subject fascinating, and I'm super convinced that most everything you get done is in the subconscious, and then that kind of goes full circle back to, anyway, if anyone's watching this, when someone's watching this, you're trying to figure out how to get something accomplished or do something next or do something at a higher level. It's going to come down to making a commitment, making a full decision, not a partial decision, but a full decision. And that is one thing I did with revenue share. I'm like, okay, I'm doing this. And I told a guy once 7.5 years ago, he said, well, once we get onboarding fixed, and I said, look, and I actually told him this is darn close to exactly what I told him. I said, hey, I'm getting there, and I'm going to throw a few people over my back, and I'm going to grab a couple by the collar and a few by the hair, but I'm getting to the finish line. You coming or not? I mean, if you want, I'll drag your ass. But, if you fight me, then you can turn around and walk the other way. But I'm not fixing onboarding. That's not, that wasn't in my control. But what was in my control was to keep moving. I made a commitment and a full decision to keep moving forward. I'm going to figure this out. And then it was kind of relaxing, John. Once you make a full decision, a full decision, a lot of weight's lifted off your shoulder, because then the hard part is, the dancing, they're going this way, they're going that way. Am I going to do it? Starting and stopping. But once that full decision, 100% decision's made, and it's also pretty cool because you don't have to do it today or tomorrow. You just got to start heading in that direction. And then if you're going to already decide you're going to keep going in that direction, kind of what other you come up against is easy to handle.
Yeah. I think I love that. Right. And being able to, like you said, fully make a decision. And if you look at decision means to cut off. So that means you have to let go of something. And even in this case, it's letting go of who you were to become who you must be. What, like for you, was there anything that helped you, get to that decision point to where, okay, like I got to let go of this, right? Because like we even see it with, and we saw it early on with EXP, especially agents that still needed to produce, but they were all in on the attraction recruiting side of things. And then, oh my goodness, I didn't have my consistent cash flow machine being able to go without me. Oh my gosh, it just revealed everything because I stepped away from it. Now it's suffering. Now I got to go back into production. Oh my gosh, now I'm 1 foot in production, 1 foot in, wanting to grow rev share. And until you make that decision, you're still going to be kind of at half potential in the thing that you're doing. So like for you, what was kind of got you over the hump to make the decision and know that this is the path I'm going?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I actually was out of production twice. I'm mostly out of production now. I'll get to that in a second. But yeah, I made the full decision, but life does happen. You got to be a little bit nimble and you got to be ready to pivot. And I do have a wife and 2 kids. One just got his MBA, daughter's in getting her master's degree. So still some financial stuff going on there. But even though I had to get back in production the first time, I still had the full decision to continue down the path of figuring out the revenue share and get it to high enough to where I had a monthly income where I wasn't going to do production. Look, I love selling real estate. I think it was Michael Reese I said to, hey, dude, I've been doing this when I joined EXP, 26 years licensed. I said, it's not like on-off switch. You can't, like when I stopped doing production the first time, I would lay in bed and think about my clients. I'm like, wait a minute, you don't have that client. And so, you do something for 26 years, and look, 26 years in real estate, it wasn't like I did 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. We're talking about 26 years, 6 and 7 days a week, right?
Yeah.
So there was a lot to that. But even when I had to go back and sell houses the first time, I still had the decision. That was just something I had to do also in order to, fulfill my financial needs. And it's hard. It's not easy. I think I'm a super big fan of EXP being created for the opportunity that you can sell more homes if you plug in, and you can also tell a few people along the way. And it's super realistic to think that if you put a little bit of time, effort, and energy into it, you can have enough rev share to offset your cap. So what a great model that is. And that was one of my first goals. Was I thought, well, if I can make 16, 17K with the fees, then it's a no-brainer to work here. So if I can go sell a few more houses than I was before, if I can bring over a few people, and if I can offset those fees, and then I get paid to work here. My first year, not typical results, but $39,000 in rev share, we'll call it 17,000 DXP cap, because I was a capping agent and then some. I was not an icon agent. But, they gave him a whole 17K back plus about 22 grand. And I'm like, I cannot believe that I got paid to work here after 26 years in real estate. Yeah. So I think that's the spirit of EXP. We're not all going to have hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in income, passive income from EXP, because, well, I guess we could, but after a while we'd run out of agents and houses to sell. But I firmly believe that agents that want to, with a little bit of time, effort, energy, and a little bit of help along the way, could offset that. And that's one thing I love about the model.
Yeah.
But yeah, out of production twice, John. Had to get in, get out, got in, get out. And when I say today, I did have 2 closings in the last 30 days. They were past clients. But I do have my pulse now on not totally, like the first time I thought, I'm out of production, right? And then that was a mistake. I could be out of production, but still have my finger on the pulse. And like when I still have leads that come in through, Braden setting up a funnel years ago that I haven't paid ad spend on. And so just 2 weeks ago, I referred a lead out and said, hey, give me a referral fee. But I'm not opening it. The 2 that I closed were totally referred out, 50-50. I didn't open doors or put signs in yards. One was a friend's son, so I met with him and I did go open, I think, 1 or 2 doors. But it's really more so because I wanted to, an old friend, and it was kind of cool going to look at a house for him and his son. But had agents on those ends that did all the paperwork and 50-50 referral fee, but they were pretty much layup type deals. So I think that's also good because that's easy to do. And, we'll do real estate income's way better than it was 10 years ago with the price point that's gone up. So
I love it. And, so getting to that point, making that decision, obviously to me, the, decision, you're going to make the best decisions the more clear you are, right? And I know success follows clarity, and that's always been at kind of the forefront of what we do for the last 20, 21, 22 years has always been
clarity report. Yeah.
Where are you at and where are you trying to go? Once I know those 2 things, right? And hopefully where you're at to where you want to go, there's an upcline, right? Right. We're hoping that you're wanting to go up. That's a worthy in pursuit of destination. And from there, then we can put the plan in place, whatever it is you want to do. But it's just the moment of getting clear, and it's really kind of thinking about it like a clarity compass, right? It's like you got to know where you're at, and then knowing where you want to go to then be able to map out from the compass, be able to map out the way to get there. The path that you want to take. You want to take the long scenic route, or do you want to take the accelerated route? Do you want to which route do you want to take to get there? Will determine, kind of the plan that we're able to put in place. And it was funny what you were saying, right? Because when it comes to vision, you have to visualize, you have to see it in order for it to be true. And as you were talking about kind of your experience in seeing the things, reminded me of the gentleman, the story I was telling you about from that pastor. And in that sermon in the session to the men's group that he shared with me, he talks about him and his wife starting out. He'd been a pastor for 20 something years at that time. So that was 20 years ago. So I've been a pastor there for over 40 years. But he said, listen, he said, we were living in assisted living through the church. We were paying $87 a month in rent, and we were on a fixed budget for food, $10 a week, him and his wife. And he's like, that don't really get you much. So we bumped up to $15 a week. And, wow. And he said, we didn't have any money for entertainment. So we didn't have any money to go to the movies. So we went window shopping, and we went by the Mercedes dealership, and there was this red Mercedes SL convertible. And my wife is like, why are we here? And he joked that we don't have no money to go to the movies, so we got to do something. So why not come here? And he had her sit in the car, So in his mind, the only thing that he wanted to do was to be able to put his wife in the red Mercedes convertible. So that became the vision of what he wanted to do for her, but he had to go see it. He had to put her in it. He had to touch it, had to feel it. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so powerful. And then they were in a home, growing family, way more bedrooms than bathrooms. Needed to figure that out. So after church on Sundays, after they would have kind of a Sunday dinner, they would go out and they would go to open houses, and they would go into the neighborhoods and, preview the houses. And it's the same thing, right? Ed Milet's story. He walked the beat that up above that he wanted to own one of those homes. For how many years did he run and walk that beach looking at those homes? And to me, that's you have to anchor that in. You have to smell it. You have to taste it. You have to touch it. You have to feel it to know if that's something that you want to pursue, if that's something you want to have. And so I was just, my mind was kind of going through all those things as you were talking to be able to get to that level of clarity. So this exercise, you have that clarity, but you're figuring it out. You got a heck of a turnaround story. This was just 8 months ago. And I know how long you've been trying to solve the riddle. Years you've been trying to solve the riddle of FLA.
Yeah, still really. I mean, I make a lot of progress, but I'm still in the rock is still in the shoe. It might be a little smaller, or maybe broken half, but it's still in there. So
it's still there. It's still there, kicking around a little bit. So what other had helped you? I mean, this exercise is so powerful, but what else has kind of helped you to kind of navigate through this success path that you're on and unlocking different levels of clarity as you continue to go?
Yeah, that's another great question. So part of that has to do with, on the clarity, knowing what I'm trying to do and just call it what it is, recruiting agents, right? On the revenue share side. There's a lot more I do to life and business, but on just that piece of it. So, I need to become a really good recruiter. And a lot of that comes in asking questions. One of the final questions that I have, though, when we're trying to figure out where they're at, where they're going, a question that I learned not too long ago is, and what are you willing to give up to get that? So, if they can tell me I'm here and I want to go there, but that question's pretty powerful because, that answer is super telling, right? I'll do whatever it takes, right? Or, I don't know, I'll work Saturday for 1 hour. So that was super important. Just that one other question. The answers are in the questions. And pain and pleasure. I try to remember my story. I was never leaving my last broker. I was on a 94% split. He's one of Craig Proctor's right-hand guys. First guy in Georgia to sell $1 billion in real estate. I'm grateful for him. I'll tell the story. I'm grateful I was there. I'm grateful that I'm not. But I would tell people that I was never leaving. I didn't get a lot of calls. I got some. I'm never leaving. You can't, I'm at 94%. You can't really, there's nothing between 94 and not really 100. I mean, we have 100% brokerages in Georgia, but there's, transaction fee. It's not really 100, right? So try to remember that. And then I remember, it's a lot of the simple things I learned, like some of the stuff from Gene Frederick in Key West when we were there, John, is like, ask them what they want, what they're trying to do. But it really boils down to pain and pleasure. One thing I told Jay mentioned to Jay not too long ago was, hey, a big deal on talking to these agents that look at a webinar or they look at an offer. The big difference is the agents that will move forward generally are trying to figure something out and want information. It's pretty difficult to recruit someone to get them to watch a webinar or to look over some information if they're not really interested. I can probably talk you into watching the webinar, but you don't really, really watch the webinar. You don't watch the webinar like I watched the webinar when I had pain at my last brokerage that I was never leaving. The things happened that I was like, I cannot believe that I'm leaving this place. Right. So I had pain. I didn't think I was ever leaving. Then I saw the XP model. I saw a lot of pleasure, but pain and pleasure is what gets people to move. And then no one asks better questions and then try to listen. And, then if you can actually really care, that can go a long way too. And there's the pieces that I struggle with, like real quick, onboarding was kind of a nightmare because people would ask me random basic questions in the beginning years ago. And I'd like, dude, Michael Reese and Jay Kenner are my sponsors. You think I called them up and asked them where my SkySlope login is? Go figure it out. I figured it out. It's not super difficult, right?
Yeah.
I mean, then they said, well, I'm like, look, if you can read and open an email, you can probably actually get on board at eXp Realty.
Yeah, yourself.
Yeah. But, you know, if you didn't know better, and look, onboarding is a blessing, and the onboarding that I use now is a big deal. So I'm not minimizing that at all. But, you know, I really only say that to say I had to mentally overcome and have a little bit more compassion in that area. And then also one big thing that was super helpful to me on that was, hey, sure, they could open the email and read it themselves, but how nice would it be if they had someone hold their hand and walk them through it? That would be a nice thing to do for them, right? So once I consciously became aware that would be a nice thing to do for them, man, that's kind of all in on it. So just little tiny things like that. You put a whole bunch of little things together and add them up, and you can go a long way.
Yeah, it is. It's so good. As you've been navigating through this journey yourself, you've got some great leaders underneath you that you've been able to attract. And, you know, how have you, you know, focusing on, you know, trying to get the rock out of your shoe, but also, you know, continuing to push to be more and more clear. How are you translating that as you're leading, you know, the organization that you've built? How does that cascade down to your other leaders?
Yeah, so part of that was tricky, especially in my free fall, to show up with 6 FLQA and lead people with, you know, 2-3 times more and bigger groups. Because if you know the model well enough to know, you know that you can recruit people and they can have a larger organization than you. So part of it was, even in that, was having the confidence and knowing who I was and what my intentions were and being sincere that I could still show up and lead. I decided when I got here that I did not have a lot of leadership experience, but to have what I wanted to have. Even back then, before I knew some of the stuff mentally that I know and some of the exercises, even back then I was aware that I needed to step that part of my game up because I didn't have that. So I knew that, you know, so started listening to John Maxwell and things like that helped a lot. A lot of it just has to do with sincerity and sometimes enthusiasm a little bit, but you know, you don't have to have all the answers or know exactly how to lead them in certain situations. If you just truly care, then seek out to try to figure out how to help them with that. So, you know, another thing that I learned from Kinder at CEO to agent CEO two ago, and he didn't say this exactly, but he was on stage talking about his team and then how he would help them to figure about 80% of it out. He already knew the other 20%, but the value came from them figuring the rest of it out. And that was massive for me. What I'd done at EXP, heck, one time I bought Ylopo for 4 months because I was trying to help a friend figure out Ylopo, and I was getting leads. I figured it all out, but that still didn't mean I could figure out the rest of, for him, that 20%, 10%, or 5%. So, you know, figuring out just enough to help the person to be able to figure it out the rest. Seems kind of tricky word-wise, but you know what I'm talking about, John. How powerful is it getting them right to the point to where then you can let go of them, but you know you got them far enough to where they can figure the rest of it out because you can't figure the rest of that out for them. So that has been a large leadership lesson too. And then a lot of that's unspoken, right? You're not telling the person, hey, I'm going to tell you this, I'm going to get you here, and I'm going to get you to here. I had a guy once say, hey, man, you always have an angle. And I said, you know what? Now I thought I had to think about it for a minute because he wasn't really coming at me in a super loving kind of way, right?
Yeah. More aggressive coming at you.
Yeah, a little bit, just a little bit. He meant well, and I don't think, and he didn't mean anything super bad by that, but you know, it was a pretty much right between my eyes kind of statement, right? And so I paused, and luckily this came to me, had to be a God thing, because it was a great response. It was 100% sincere. And I said, you know what? You have my full permission that if I ever pitch you something to do that you think I have an angle on, and if it's not in your best interest, then you call me out on the spot. I can't think of anything that I've tried to get you to do or tried to teach you or lead you to do that I would benefit from, but it would also be in your best interest. So if I ever tell you something and you think it's an angle and it's not in your best interest, please call me out immediately. And, you know, I couldn't think of anything that I'd ever tried to get him to do that wasn't in his best interest. Was I going to benefit? Sure. That was the angle, right? Kind of the XP model. Hey, if I can get you to be a rock star, then I'm going to totally benefit. But if I can help you be a rock star, you're going to win too, right? So
yeah,
I just thought that was a really eye-opening comment, and you know, it also made me aware to be a little careful when I'm pitching angles. But you know, how cool is it that we can have angles that we benefit from? You know, if you're creating a win-win situation, then there's nothing wrong with it, right?
Nothing wrong with it, right? And go back to what we were talking about prior to, and just, you know, coming from that servant leadership heart, like, dude, all I'm trying to do is help you achieve your vision. And I know in this model, if I help you achieve your goals, you're definitely going to help me achieve mine. And I think it's some of that, but not using it in a way that is more of a barter leadership style. It's more of like, dude, I'm just like, I am genuinely trying to help you. And the byproduct is if I help you, then obviously you help me, but that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I genuinely want to align and work with people that really see value in the opportunity. And I believe I can at least guide you down the path.
Hey, I want to leave you. I want to say something else before we go. And this was super important too. And this came from you guys, you and John, and you and Jay and Mike. But you know, what's the goal? So when I run things through the filters that you guys have taught me, like, what's the goal? Why is that the goal? How many ways to accomplish the goal? And is this really the best way? But when I run things through that, I mean, I use that in decision making all the time. It sounds super basic, but not too long ago, it was somewhat of a challenging thing going on in leadership and with the group. And then, you know, I was thinking I could do this, I could do that. And then once I ran it through the filter of what's the goal, then I didn't really have to do anything about it, because if I was going to do something about it, might have been fixing an ego, or maybe we're setting something straight. But in no way, shape, or form was that conversation going to help me achieve the goal. So maybe I think someone maybe need to hear that is, you know, run things, get super clear and know the goal. And if you know the goal, and then if you run things, make decision-making processes through the filter of, you know, how's that going to help me with my goal? Is that, you know, what is that going to do to the goal? Is it even necessary? With that, it was going to be a long conversation that probably wasn't going to be probably wasn't going to be super comfortable anyway. And then when I ran it through that filter, I'm aware that I don't even need to have that conversation. In no way, shape, or form is that going to help me attain move forward in obtaining the goal. So maybe there's some value in that. And just
there's a ton of value in that, Dan. I mean, it really is everything. And you know, I think we do it so like you were talking, consciously, unconsciously. It's just one of the things that just happens is like, what's the goal? Like, are you solving a problem that's going to help you get closer to the goal, or are you just solving a problem? Now you see it, you're locked in. You just got to solve it out of spot. You got to solve it just because you got to solve it. And sometimes it's like, man, even if I solve this riddle, it's not going to help me get closer to where I want to be. So it's the whole, just because, I mean, whatever analogy you want, right? Like, I think, you know, one of my favorites is stop digging. Once you realize you're digging in the wrong hole, stop digging and go over to the other one. Or once you realize you're climbing up the wrong, you know, the ladder that's up against the wrong wall, it's okay. Stop, go down, go over, go put your ladder on the right wall and start the climb, you know, from there. It really is. I mean, it just, that level right there clicks into the whole clarity conversation is one, knowing what you want, knowing what you want to experience, knowing where you want to go, but being genuinely honest and authentic with yourself, right? All progress begins with telling the truth. Where are you at? Like, genuinely, where are you at? And all the good, the bad, the ugly, everything. And I think once you can come to grips with that and knowing where you want to go, that just accelerates the process so much faster. And because we're going to stop off, we're going to make, exits, but how do we get right back on the right path fast instead of just, pulling off the road and taking a breather? Sometimes we just hang out there too long and we don't get back on the path, or we miss the exit and we get off on the side roads, and gosh knows how long we get derailed and get lost before we find our way back to the other path. So that's super important. But Dan, fantastic as always. As we're wrapping up here, you're coming close. You're almost 8 years playing this game, and so you have that free pass to go back to your eight year ago self, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to yourself 8 years ago that, obviously you have to go through what you had to go through to get to where you're at. However, if you could give some advice to, yourself 8 years ago, starting this journey, what would that advice be?
Probably if I had a little bit more clarity on my avatar of who I was trying to help, instead of just help everyone. I had the same problem in real estate once. I was mostly a buyer's agent. I did listings at toward the end, because after a while my clients would, not all of them, but they call me up and have a house to sell. But, one of the mistakes I made in my traditional real estate business many, many years ago was I'd look at my database and treat them all the same. And it was super helpful for this guy to say, hey, who's next? And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, well, somebody's next, unless, you're going to sell another house. And I'm like, yeah. He goes, well, who's next? And I'm like, huh. And then he goes, yeah, so the top three, like who the top three that are next. So I think the same thing. One thing, thank God for me, agent attention and recruiting, attraction is super similar to working with buyers and sellers is, on that list, somebody's next. And then, probably shouldn't sell the person. Like, if I'm going to go out and sell a home, probably don't want to sell a $180,000 home if I can sell an $800,000 home. And it's a little bit the same with agents. You got to be careful. And I don't play God and I don't have a crystal ball, but getting clear on generally who my avatar is, and then being open to still work with others. Michael Reese one time said, he said, hey, who next year's rookie of the year is, right? And I was like, no one knows. But I understood what he was saying was be careful, because like somebody doesn't have a license yet and they're going to sell a whole bunch of houses next year. Right. So a little bit of a needle in a haystack. And I'd like to kind of end on, or at least kind of come near the end on this, is on you. Look, so whoever's listening to this, I'm aware that you have way more in you, and you can create more and you can do more if you want to than you're doing right now. And one of the light bulb moments for me going down this subconscious, conscious mental path was talking about designing your life. You really probably can design your life quite a bit more than, and me included, than you've done so far. And how I became aware that I really believed that was laying on my couch, watching a baseball game, and then listening to a training on designing my life. And basically, I kind of paraphrase, they were saying, you can have whatever you want, and the life you have right now is because you designed it this way. And then, for example, I looked past the TV and the fireplace and the bookcase and the pictures and the books and all that. And I thought, my wife and I designed that. It could have looked totally different, right? Yeah. And then, it could be a different house even. It could be a different TV, all this I designed. So if I truly designed all of this, I could have designed something else. And in the future, I could design something else. So why not start today with designing and trying to move in the direction of having the life and being the person you want to be, to have what you want to have. And that's probably way more in your control than you think.
Yeah, that's so good. So good. Dan, always just really insightful, really impactful, and knowing the journey you've been on and the constant riddle. I think that's another success clue, is that you never let up on the constraint. You never let up. You never just like took your shoe off and dumped that rock out and put a different one in. And like, you knew what that pebble was, and you're just in constant pursuit of being able to remove that impediment, right? Remove that pebble, remove that constraint, whatever, however your head helps, identify what the main thing is, and you haven't let up on it. And I know you won't let up on it until it's no longer an issue. And then there'll be another rock in your shoe, and you'll go solve that with the same tenacity that you've been all over this one.
I appreciate that. Hey, I couldn't have done it without you, John Kissens. You're a big piece of you're a big tool of my tool belt. So I really appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. Well, brother, I can't thank you enough. And it's just exciting and remarkable for what you've been able to do. And just a pillar of consistency, of being disciplined to the process. You show up. On the first of the month, you're the only one that has posted. How many months in a row have we had that that post?
Dude, that's 7+ years on the first day of the month. Honey Badger Nation, go scroll all the way. Not the 31st, not the 2nd, day 1. Yeah. Hadn't happened on Christmas yet, but when it does, I'll still. I asked Curtis Johnson about a year ago. I said, aren't I done? It's kind of, it's run its course, right? He's like, no, man. He goes, at this point, you do it for others. You're not doing it for yourself. And I said, when do I stop doing it? He goes, you don't. I was like, thanks, Curtis.
You never do. You never do. There's so many people that it's an extra shot of inspiration. And I can't thank you enough, brother.
I appreciate you, John Kitchens. Thanks for having me.
You got it, brother. We'll do it again. Guys, connect with Dan, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you.